as he is. ननु सर्वेपि तं वर्णयन्तो दृश्यन्ते तत्राह यस्येति. This current statement anticipates an objection. We see everybody is describing the Supreme Lord. In response to that, he is speaking this. Yes, we are speaking about him, but we can hardly fully know him. Jiva Goswami. Tatvena, Shakti Swarupabhyam Yatharthyena. We do not know uh, the facts concerning his potencies, his nature, and so on. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur brings out another observation that Kirtanadi Bhaktistu Tat Swarupa Ajnane api Sambhavati iti darshayan aha yasyati. Devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, such as Kirtanam, can take place even if one does not have full knowledge of his nature. Ataha tasya avatarams tat karmani cha brumahe tvam shrinu iti bhavaha. So the implication is, so we are going to now speak about his incarnations and the activities performed by those incarnations. Listen, it is said that the Lord's transcendental name, form, qualities, pastimes, paraphernalia, personality, etc., cannot possibly be perceived by the gross materialistic sense. But when the senses are purified by the process of hearing, chanting, remembering, and worshipping the lotus feet of the holy deity, etc., the Lord reveals himself proportionately to the advancement of the quality of devotional service. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. One should not expect the Lord to be an order-supplying agent who must be present before us as soon as we desire to see him. We must be ready to undergo the prescribed devotional duties, following the path shown by the predecessors in the disciplic succession from Brahma, Narada, and similar authorities. As the senses are progressively purified by bona fide devotional service, the Lord reveals his identity according to the spiritual advancement of the devotee. But one who is not in the line of devotion service can hardly perceive him simply by calculations and philosophical speculation. Such a hard worker can present a jugglery of words before an audience, but can never know the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his personal feature. The Lord has clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita that one can know him only by devotional service. No one can know the Lord by any puffed up material process of challenge, but the humble devotee can please the Lord by his earnest devotional activities. Earnest. Earnest means grave, important, characterized by an intense and serious state of mind, proceeding from an intense and serious state of mind. Earnest devotional activities. Thus, the Lord reveals himself proportionately before the devotee. Lord Brahma therefore offers his respectful obeisances as a bona fide spiritual master and advises us to follow the process of Shravana and Kirtana. Simply by this process, or simply by hearing and chanting the glories of the activities of the Lord's incarnation, one can certainly see within himself the identity of the Lord. It means one can see within oneself the personality of the Supreme Lord. We have already discussed this subject in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in connection with this verse. Tachaddathana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyantya atmani chatmanam bhaktya shrutagahitaya. 1.2.12. The conclusion is that one cannot know the Supreme Personality of Godhead fully by any method, but he can be seen and felt partially by the devotion service process of hearing, chanting, etc. Text 39. स एष आद्यः पुरुषः कल्पे कल्पे सृजत यजः आत्मात्मन्यात्मनात्मानं ससंयच्छति पार्थि च. That supreme original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, expanding his plenary portion as Mahavishnu, the first incarnation, creates this manifested cosmos, but he is unborn. The creation, however, takes place in him, and the material substance and manifestations are all himself. He maintains them for some time and absorbs them into himself again. Avatara karmani sankshepatāh darshayati. He now briefly points out the activities of his incarnations. Sa esha adyo bhagavan yah purushavatara san srishti adi karoti. That Lord, that original personality of Godhead, he becomes the Purushavatara and engages in the activities of creation and so on. Atma, Atmani, Atmana, Atmanam. Kartadhikaranam sadhanam karma cha swayameva ityarthaha. He is the doer. He is the place where the activity happens. He is himself the very activity also. Purushavataraha srishtyadi nicha karmani iti sankshepa. Purushavatara, why should it be Purushavatara? Right. Trace out. It's 2.6.39. 2.61. Purushavatara. So, he has briefly discussed about the Purushavatara and the activities of creation and so on. Tatra sarva vilakshanam shaktim yat kinchil lakshayati. He then characterizes the potency of the Lord that is unique. Adyam Purushavataram tat karmani cha sankshepenaha. So he briefly describes the first Purushavatara and his activities. Kalpe kalpe. Prati Mahakalpa Arambhe. At the beginning of every Mahakalpa. The creation is not different from the Lord, and still he is not in the creation. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4 as follows. Maya tatamitam sarvam jagad avyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani nachaham teshu avastitaha. The impersonal conception of the absolute truth is also a form of the Lord called avyaktamurti. Murti means form, but because his impersonal feature is inexplicable to our limited senses, he is the avyaktamurti form. And in that inexplicable form of the Lord, the whole creation is resting. Or in other words, the whole creation is the Lord himself. And the creation is also non-different from him. But simultaneously, he, as the original personality of Lord Sri Krishna, is aloof from the created manifestation. The impersonalist gives stress to the impersonal form or feature of the Lord and does not believe in the original personality of the Lord. But the Vaishnavas accept the original form of the Lord, of whom the impersonal form is merely one of the features. The impersonal and personal conceptions of the Lord are existing simultaneously. And this fact is clearly described both in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and also in other Vedic scriptures. Inconceivable to human intelligence, the idea must simply be accepted on the authority of the scriptures, and it can only be practically realized by the process of devotion, service unto the Lord, and never by mental speculation or inductive logic. The impersonalists depend more or less on inductive logic. And therefore, they always remain in darkness about the original personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. In inductive logic, you take specific instances and try to derive a universal conclusion. You see someone dead, and then you see somebody else about to die. And in general, you notice that everyone dies. So then you come to the conclusion everyone must die. You cannot actually prove it, but this is what is known as inductive logic. In inductive logic, the premises do not necessarily lead to the conclusion, but it is highly probable. It is probable that if the premises are true, the conclusion is true. The impersonalists depend more or less on inductive logic, and therefore they always remain in darkness about the original personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Their conception of Krishna is not clear, although everything is clearly mentioned in all the Vedic scriptures. A poor fund of knowledge cannot comprehend the existence of an original personal form of the Lord when he is expanded in everything. See that the impersonalists are not very much fixed in the correct scriptural understanding is pointed out in all the four Vaishnava Sampradayas, and additionally in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya also. Very rigorously they have proven it in different ways. Ramanujacharya in a particular way, Madhvacharya in a particular way. Then you have Vallabhacharya from the Vishnu Swami line. Then you have Keshava Kashmiri from the Nimbarka line. Our own Acharyas, Jiva Goswami, has proven with direct evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam. It should be very clearly understood that the impersonalism, the philosophy of impersonalism is not clearly and well founded on the scriptures. A poor fund of knowledge cannot comprehend the existence of an original personal form of the Lord when he is expanded in everything. This imperfectness is due more or less to the material conception that a substance distributed widely in parts can no longer exist in the original form. The original personality of God, Adya, Govinda, expands himself as a Mahavishnu incarnation and rests in the causal ocean, which he himself creates. The Brahma Samhita 5.47 confirms this as follows. Yah karanarnava jale bhajatisma yoga nidramananta jagadanda saroma kupaha adhara shaktim avalambya param somurtim govindamadi bhavisham tamaham bhajami. Lord Brahmaji says in his Brahma Samhita, I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who lies down in the causal ocean. In his plenary portion is Mahavishnu, with all the universes generating from the pores of hair on his transcendental body, and who accepts the mystic slumber of eternity. So this Mahavishnu is the first incarnation in the creation, and from him all the universes are generated and all material manifestations are produced one after another. The causal ocean is created by the Lord as a Mahatattva, as a cloud in the spiritual sky, and is only a part of his different manifestations. The spiritual sky is an expansion of his personal rays, and he is the Mahatattva cloud also. He lies down and generates the universes by his breathing. And again, by entering into each universe as Garbhodakashai Vishnu, he creates Brahma, Shiva, and many other demigods for maintenance of the universe. And again absorbs the whole thing into his person as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.7. Sarvabhutani Kaunteya, Prakritim Yanti Mamikam, Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpado Visrajamyaham. O son of Kunti, when the Kalpa or the duration of the life of Brahma is ended, then all the created manifestations enter into my Prakriti or energy. And again, when I desire, the same creation takes place by my personal energy. The conclusion is that these are all but displays of the Lord's inconceivable personal energies, of which no one can have any full information. This point we have already discussed. Texts 40 and 41. Vishuddham kevalam jnanam pratyak samyak avasthitam satyam purnam anantya satyam purnam anadyantam nirgunam nityam advayam rishe vidanti munaya prashantatmendriyashayah yada taddeva sattarkais tirodhiyeta viplutam. The personality of Godhead is pure, being free from all contaminations of material tinges. He is the absolute truth and the embodiment of full and perfect knowledge. He is all-pervading, without beginning or end, and without a rival. O Narada, O great sage, the great thinkers can know him when completely freed from all material hankerings and when sheltered under undisturbed conditions of the senses. Otherwise, by untenable arguments, all is distorted and the Lord disappears from our sight. Na yam vidanti tattvena ityuktam kim tattvam. Lord Brahma had stated, we glorify him, his incarnations, his activities, but we do not know him in truth. So what is that truth? Ityapekshayamaha jnanam kevalam satyam tattvam घटाद्याकार वृद्धि ज्ञानम व्यवच्छेदार्थम विशेषणानि विशुद्ध विषय आकार शून्य यतः प्रत्यक सर्वांतरम, because he is entirely, he is consciousness. The Supreme Lord is described, even Baladev Vidyabhushana has described him as Vibhu Chaitanya, as infinite consciousness. And he has described the Jivatma as Anu Chaitanya, infinitesimal consciousness. But he has also stated that even though Ishvara and Jiva are consciousness, they are also conscious beings. Just as the sun is the source of illumination. So it is illumination, but it is also illuminating. Sometimes we refer to the source of light as light itself. Like we refer to electric lamps as light. Please turn on the light. Please turn off the light. That electric lamp, it emanates light. But the source of that light is also called light. Like that, the Supreme Lord is also described as consciousness. Pure consciousness, meaning that there is nothing material with him, not like the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, we are covered with subtle material body and the gross material body. So we are a combination of spirit and matter in conditioned existence. But the Supreme Lord is not like that at all. He is pure. He is not like anything material, not like any material object. He is pratyak. He is fully within everything. He is penetrated into everything, all pervading. Ateva samyak sandehadirahitam. Therefore, he is present in fullness with there being no question of doubt about his existence in spiritual realization. Avasthitam, sthiram, permanently present. Yataha nirguna, because he is nirguna. Gunakaryam hi guna vyatikarat chanchalam bhavati. He is beyond the modes of material nature. The effect of the three modes of material nature is flickering, is that there is a flickering nature, because the modes of nature are constantly imbalanced. यद्यपि वृत्तिज्ञानमपि स्वरूपज्ञानम् एवेति न चाञ्चल्यादि दोषै युक्तं तथापि अन्तःकरणवृत्ति दोषैः तथा तथा भवति इति व्यवच्छिद्यते एवरेव विशेषणैः सत्यत्वम् अपि समर्थितं किञ्च यद् विकारवत् तद् असत्यं दृष्टं न चास्य जन्मादयः षड्विकारः सन्ति. That which is subject to transformation is seen to be false, but the Supreme Lord does not undergo these 6 transformations beginning with birth. Anadyantam, Janmanasharahitam, is devoid of generation and destruction. Ateva जन्म अनंतर अस्तित्वलक्षणमपि विकारः नास्ति. So there is no question of him taking birth and so on in reality. वृद्धि विपरिणाम अपक्षयाः च न सन्ति. Nor does he grow, nor does he produce byproducts, nor does he degrade. Yataha Purnam, because he is perfect. Sarvatra Hetuhu. The cause of all of this is Nityam, Advayam, Nityam Sarvada, Dvaita Pratiti Samayepi, Paramarthataha Advayam. He is non-dual, eternally. Even though we perceive with the vision of duality, in reality, he is non-dual. His existence is non-dual. Here is the Supreme Lord's nature is being characterized in two verses, beginning with the current verse. Tatra jnanamiti visheshyam. So it is his knowledge that is being described here. Tacha sukhaswarupameva. And that is of the nature of bliss. Vijnanam anandam brahma iti shrute. Because the Shruti says that Brahman, he is consciousness and bliss. Tasya jivaswarupa vrikshanata gyapakani visheshanani aha. And that Supreme Brahman, that Supreme Paramatma, that Supreme Bhagavan, is the same person. He possesses certain features which indicate that he is entirely distinct from the jivas. His nature is distinct from the nature of the jivas. Vishuddham, kevalam, visheshena, visheshanena, shuddhameva, natu avidya viddham yartah. He is entirely pure. He is not mixed up with avidya. Ayam atma, pahatapapma, iti shrute. Because the Shruti says that this Supreme Soul, he is devoid of all forms of sin. Chandogya, famous statement. Yataha pratyak sarvatopyantaram. Because he is all-pervading. In other words, he has entered into everything. Yah prithivyam tishtan nityarabhya ya atmanam antaro yamyati iti shrute. Because the Shruti says that he is present inside earth. This is the Antaryami Brahmana, Vrihadaranyaka Upanishad. He who is present inside earth, he who controls earth, who knows the earth and whom earth does not know, who is the soul of earth and whose body the earth is, know him to be the actual Atma, the eternal, immortal one. He who is present inside water, who knows water, whom water does not know, who is the soul of water, whose body water is, know him to be the ultimate soul, know him to be the immortal, eternal one. He who is present inside air, who knows air, who is different from air, who air does not know. Like this, there are 21 times it comes. And it ends with this. He who is present inside the Atma, who is different from the Atma, who knows the Atma, whom the Atma does not know, who controls him from within, who's the Atma and whose body the Atma is. Know him to be the immortal, ultimate soul. So from that we understand that he is all-pervading in this sense. His all-pervading doesn't mean that he has lost his existence. Rather, he is all-pervading as the ultimate soul of everything. He has to be present inside everything. The matter cannot function. Bahiranga Shakti cannot function without Tatastha Shakti. But the Supreme Lord himself has to be present in the Tatastha Shakti for the Tatastha Shakti itself to function. And the Tatastha Shakti has to be present in Bahiranga Shakti for the Bahiranga Shakti to function. Ataha samyak akshubhitatayaiva asamantadvyapya sthitam nato avrita vikshiptam nacha anuparimanam ityartha. And the Supreme Lord is present everywhere without being agitated, without being covered up, without being infinitesimal. Eko Deva Ityadi Shrute. Because the Shruti says that the Supreme Being himself is present. Without changing his nature, is present inside everything. Kimcha Satyam Sarvasatta Pradha Swarupatva Satya Padarthana Mukhyam Natu Taditaram. He is the one who is the truth, which means his very nature is to give existence to others. So he is the predominant entity amongst any entity which is true. Satyam Chanrutam cha Satyam eva bhavat iti Shruti. Because the Shruti says the truth became the truth. Purnam bhagavataya samhritam natu taya hinam ityartha. Is perfect. Is filled with the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. He is never devoid of that nature. Ateva anadya ananta swarupa vaibhava. Has this nature of being beginningless, endless. This is his glory. Nirgata gunebhya sattvadibhya guna aishwaryadaya syat yasya tadrasham cha. His six opulences are entirely distinct from the modes of material nature. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate ityadi Shruti. Because the Shruti says that there is no distinction between himself and his senses. He does not have a cause, nor does he have any instruments for which he is dependent. Anena tadrisha rupavatvam cha ayatam. So the conclusion is that he has a nature which is appropriate to, he has a form which is appropriate to his nature. Na sandrshe tishtati rupamasya yamme vaishya vrinate tena labhyasta sesha atma vrinate tanu swamiti Shruti. Because the Shruti says that his form cannot be just seen like that. Only that one to whom he wants to reveal, the one whom he chooses, only such a chosen person can see his form. Sarvasatta pradaswarupatvad nityameva advayam. So he is eternally non-dual because his very nature is to provide existence to others. Prathak vastu rahitatvad bhayarahitam. And because there is no one separate from him, he is entirely fearless. Ekamevad vayam brahma dvitiyad vayam bhavati iti Shruti. Because the Shruti says that it is because of having a conception of duality that fear arises. This is something the impersonalists keep quoting all the time. Bhayam, advaitadvai bhayam bhavati. It is because of duality that you attain fear. Fear of material existence is because of duality. Duality means plurality, manyness, nanatva. But what they forget is the nature of the Supreme Being is that he is non-different from his own existence. So he is actually the non-dual personality of Godhead. This is beyond the imagination of the impersonalist. Tadevam sarvesham tanmulatvepi asti bhinnam swarupa vailakshanyam. So even though the Supreme Lord is the root cause of everything, still he has his own distinct nature. Anyata na yam vidanti tattvena iti visheshoktir vyarthisya. Otherwise, that specific expression, we describe the Lord's incarnations and activities, but we don't know him in truth, would be useless. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur anticipates that this question, this is an answer to the question. This is the impersonal feature of the Lord. And then the entire verse is a description of the Lord's features. Here's an estimation of the Lord apart from his transcendental activities in the temporary material creations. Mayavada philosophy tries to designate the Lord as contaminated by a material body when he accepts forms of incarnation. This sort of interpolation, ideological interpolation, is completely denied herein by the explanation that the Lord's position is pure and unalloyed in all circumstances. According to Mayavada philosophy, the spirit soul, when covered by nescience, is designated as jiva. But when freed from such ignorance or nescience, he merges into the impersonal existence of the absolute truth. But here it is said that the Lord is eternally the symbol of full and perfect knowledge. This is his speciality, perpetual freedom from all material contaminations. This distinguishes the Lord from the individual common living entities who have the aptitude for being subordinated by nescience and thus becoming materially designated. In the Vedas, it is said that the Lord is Vijnanam Anandam, full of knowledge and bliss. The conditioned souls are never to be equated with him because the individual souls have the tendency to become contaminated. Although after liberation, the living entity can become one with the same quality of existence as the Lord, his very tendency to become contaminated, which the Lord never has, makes the individual living entity different from the Lord. This is an observation of Lord Chaitanya's. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has observed that the difference between Ishvara and Jiva is that the Jiva can become contaminated by Prakriti, material nature. The Ishvara can never ever become contaminated by Prakriti. Maya Adhish, Maya Vash. Maya Adhisha, Maya Vasha. So the Supreme Being is perpetually the controller of Maya. Even if you say Maya refers to Mahamaya or Yoga Maya or Prakrita Maya or Prakrita Maya, even if you take that interpretation, the Supreme Lord, he is never under the control of Mahamaya or Yoga Maya. But the Jivatma has to be either under the control of Yoga Maya or Mahamaya. Can never ever be outside of the control of the Lord's potencies. In the Vedas, it is said, Shuddham apapa vidham, the individual Atma becomes polluted by sin, but the Lord is never contaminated by sins. The Lord is compared to the powerful sun. The sun is never contaminated by anything infectious because it is so powerful. On the contrary, infected things are sterilized by the rays of the sun. Similarly, the Lord is never contaminated by sins. On the contrary, the sinful living entities become sterilized by contact with the Lord. This means that the Lord is also all-pervading like the sun. And as such, the word pratyak is used in this verse. Pratyak means all-pervading. Nothing is excluded from the existence of the expansions of the Lord's potencies. The Lord is within everything, and he is all-covering also, without being disturbed by the activities of the individual souls. He is therefore infinite, and the living entities are infinitesimal. In the Vedas, it is said that only the Lord exists independently, and that all other existences depend on him. He is a generating reservoir for everyone's existential capacity. He is the supreme truth, the basis of all other categorical truths. He is the source of everyone's opulence, and therefore no one can equal him in opulence. Being full of all opulences, namely wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, certainly he is the supreme person. And because he's a person, has many personal qualities, although he's transcendental to the material modes. We've already discussed the statement, Itham Bhuta Guno Harihi, 1.7.10. His transcendental qualities are so attractive that even the liberated souls, Atmaramas, are also attracted by them. Although possessed of all personal qualities, he is nevertheless omnipotent. Therefore, personally, he has nothing to do, for everything is being carried out by his omnipotent energies. This is confirmed by the Vedic mantras. Prasya Shaktir Vidhaiva Shruyate Swabhavik Jnanam Balakriyacha. This suggests his specific spiritual form, which can never be experienced by the material senses. He can be seen only when the senses are purified by devotion service. Yamme Vaishya tena labhyas. Sesha Atma vivranate tanam swam. As such, there are basic differences between the Lord and the living entities in so many respects. No one can be compared with the Lord, as the Vedas declare. Ekamevad Vitiyam Brahma, Vaitad Vai Bhayam Bhavati. The Lord has no competitor and he has nothing to fear from any other being, nor can anyone be equal to him. See, the expression Dvitiya, Dvaita, Dvaya, Advitiya, Advaya. These have been analyzed by the Vaishnava Acharyas. An expression like Advaya, we come across this in Bhagavatam also. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam. Advayam. So Madhvacharya points out, Advaya means one who has no one who can be his rival. So Advaya means unrivaled. In Sanskrit, we have an expression, Advitiya. We say Advaya means Advitiya. Advitiya means there is no one who is as good as that person. For instance, there's a statement that Arjuna is a bowman who has no one who is as good as him. He is one without a second. So this means there is no one who is as good as him. He is the supreme in that category of archer. So when you come across expressions like he is non-dual, one meaning of that is there is no one who is as good as him, unrivaled. Although he is the root of all other beings, there are basic differences between him and the other beings. Otherwise, there would have been no necessity for the statement in text 38 that no one can know him 100% as he is. Na yam vidanti tattvena. That no one can fully understand him is explained in the present verses also, but the qualification for understanding him to some degree is also mentioned here. Only the prashantas or the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can know him to some extent. The reason is that the devotees have no demands in their lives but to be obedient servants of the Lord, while all others, namely the empiric philosophers, the mystics, and the fruitive workers, all basically have some demand, and as such, they cannot be pacified. The fruitive worker wants reward for his work. The mystic wants some perfection of life, and the empiric philosopher wants to merge into the existence of the Lord. Somehow or other, as long as there is a demand for sense satisfaction, there is no chance for pacification. On the contrary, by unnecessary dry speculative arguments, the whole matter becomes distorted, and thus the Lord moves still further away from our understanding. The dry speculators, however, because of their following the principles of austerity and penance, can have knowledge of the impersonal features of the Lord to some extent, but there is no chance of their understanding his ultimate form as Govinda, because only the Amalatmanas or the completely sinless persons can accept pure devotional service to the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.28. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dritha vrata. Yes, that's a question here. Chitranam Prabhu, you had a question.
Thanks for that. Hare Krishna, bro. Volume come. Prabhuji, Prabhu, when it is said that devotee does not have demands, so does it include spiritual demands also?
Yeah, the pure devotee of Krishna does not have any demand.
बोल रहे हैं वो.
Okay, text 42. आद्योऽवतार पुरुषः परस्य कालस्वभावस्तद्दसन्मनश्च द्रव्यं विकारो गुण इन्द्रियाणि विराट स्वराट स्थास्नुच्चरिष्णु भूम्नः Aranarnavashayi Vishnu is the first incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Right? This is correct. Okay, so we have looked at two verses here. Let me look at the next verse. It's also a very interesting verse. Atra vidvat anubhavam pramanayati. Okay, the second part of the verse is this. Let me read out this translation. We don't forget. O Narada, O great sage, the great thinkers can know him when completely freed from all material hankerings and when sheltered under undisturbed conditions of the senses. Otherwise, by untenable arguments, all is distorted and the Lord disappears from our sight. Atra vidvad anubhavam pramanayati. Now he cites as evidence the experience of the enlightened souls. He Rishi Narada, O sage Narada, prashanta atmendriya ashayaha prasanna dehendriya manasaha yada bhavanti tata vidanti. When one's body, senses, mind, and so on, all of that becomes peaceful, tranquil, then they are able to know. They are able to know about the Supreme Lord. Anyada tattajnane karanamaha. Otherwise, they don't. And the reason for that ignorance, that is now spelled out. Yada taddeva prakashamanam eva asatam tarkai viplutam syat tata tirodhiyeta. So when that perception of the Supreme Lord is covered over by the logic of the senseless persons, then the Supreme Lord disappears. Anya paksha patitanam avedyatve hetumaha. Prashanta bhagavan nishtha atma adayaha yesham taeva tadvitanti. If one were to accept other positions, other philosophical positions, then the Supreme Lord will turn out to be inconceivable, unrealizable. Only those whose selves and so on are fixed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are peaceful in this manner, only they can realize Him. Asat tarkaihi yo anadrito narakabhagbir asat prasangaihi iti vakshvana trivyaskanta gata mad ukta disha. Adrisha tadrupadi kutarkaistu viplatam sat yat virodhiyata. So when one brings up false logic about the nature of his form and so on, this will be referred to in the third canto. Then the Supreme Lord disappears from one's vision. Tadeva manena padya chatushkena tadrisha swarupa eva bhagavan tadrisha swarupa shaktiya tadrupa san avataradikam karoti. So from these four verses, it is understood that the Supreme Lord, while maintaining his nature with his personal potency, incarnates and expands, incarnates, and so on, all the while possessing his nature as it is. Tatra tattat ajnaha tattat gayantaha api na sukham prapnuvanti. But those who are ignorant of these facts, even though they sing about him, they do not attain happiness. Yataha tad vijnane cha adhikritya parinishitopi nairgunye ityadikam bahutaram giyata iti vyanjita. Because many times it is pointed out that the Supreme Lord is actually properly glorified only when one comes to the point of full realization, when one is himself situated beyond the modes of material nature. एतेन तस्य निर्विशेषस्वरूपं तद्ब्रह्म तत् कथञ्चिदपि ज्ञातुं शक्यं न तु सविशेषस्वरूपम् इत्युक्तम्. So from these two verses, from this verse, it should be understood that the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the impersonal Brahman feature of the Supreme Lord, Somehow it can be realized to some extent, can be known, but his personal feature, it cannot be known in this way. And this will be noted in the 10th canto also. Karananashai Vishnu is the first incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and is the master of eternal time, space, cause, and effects, mind, the elements, the material ego, the modes of nature, the senses, the universal form of the Lord, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and the sum total of all living beings, both moving and non-moving. Avataran Vistarena Aha. Now, he elaborates on the incarnations. Adya Ityadi Yavadadhyaya Samapti. Beginning with the current verse up to the end of this chapter. Parasya Bhumnaha Purushaha Prakriti Pravartakaha. So this refers to the great Lord who impels Prakriti. Yasya Sahasra Shirsha Ityukto Leela Vigraha Sa Adyo Avataraha. That pastime form of the Lord, who is referred to as Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha, Sahasraksha Sahasrapak. He is the first incarnation. Vakshyati, he, because it will be stated in the 11th canto that Lord Narayana, he expands himself into the universe. Yathoktam, as stated, Vishnostu Trini Rupani Purushakyanyato Vitohu Yato Vitohu Prathamam Mahata Srashti Dutiyam tu Anda Samsitam Tritiyam Sarvabhutastam Taning Yatva Vimuchyate iti. Lord Vishnu has three forms. They are known as the Purushas. The first Purusha is the creator of Mahat Tattva. The second is the one situated inside the Brahmanda. The third is situated inside every living creature. By knowing, understanding, and realizing them, one becomes liberated. Yadyapi sarvesham avisheshena avataratvam uchyate. Even though all of these three are without any distinction referred to as the Lord's incarnation, तथापि कालश्च स्वभावश्च सद्दसद् इति कार्य कारणात्मिका प्रकृतिश्च एता शक्तयः मन आदीनि कार्याणि ब्रह्मादयः गुणावतारा लक्षादयो विभूतयो इति विवेक्तव्यम्. Still, it is important to distinguish between time and nature as sat and asat. In other words, the cause and the effect. Prakriti is so all of this, time, nature, Prakriti, these are all his potencies. And mind, intelligence, false ego, and so on, these are products from Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, are Gunavataras. Daksha and the others are Vibhutis. Vibhuti means Alpashakti Avishta. When a being is slightly empowered by the Lord, then he is called Vibhuti, opulence. When he is greatly empowered by the Supreme Lord, he is known as Shakti Avesha. This is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kramottara Nivikshitaha. Here, in this verse, he is not specifying creation in a particular order, in any particular order. Vikaraha, Ahankaraha. The word Vikara or transformation refers to Ahankara or material ego. Gunaha Satvadiki. Virat Samashti Shariram. Virat refers to the complete whole body. Swarat Vairajaha. Swarat refers to one particular universe's controller. Sthasno, Stavaram, Charishno, Jangamam, Cha, Vyashti Sharira. These are with reference to each body. Every living creature has a body also. Purvarthameva Spashtayati. Now he clarifies what was stated before. आद्योवतारे इत्यादिना परस्य भूम्नः स्वरूपेण शक्त्या च सर्वा अतिशायिनः अवतारः. So this is the incarnation of the Supreme Being who is greater than everyone else in terms of his nature and potency. Prakrita Vaibhave Swechaya Avirbhavaha. The incarnation means appearance by his own choice within this material field of glory. The material world is also a product of Krishna's glory. स एष आद्य पुरुषः इति एकेन श्लोकेन उक्तं पुरुषावतारं तत्कर्म च वृणोति सार्थैः चतुर्भिः. In one verse, text 38, the Purushavatara was mentioned. Now, that Purushavatara, as well as his activity, are being elaborated in 4.5 verses. Parasya, Parasya, Paravyoma, Adhinathasya Bhagavataha, Adhyaha, Pratamaha Avatara. So this is the first incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of the spiritual sky. Purushaha, Prakriti Ikshanakarta, Karnarnavashayi. This is Karnarnavashayi Vishnu, Karnodakashayi Vishnu, who is the one who glances at Prakriti. This is that Purusha. Jagrihe Paurusham Rupam Bhagavan iti Prathamokte, because this is how he is described in the first canto. Kala Swabhava Adayascha Tasya Karma Uchyate. Kalpe kalpe srijatya ajaha atma atmanya atmana atmanam ityukte. So his activity refers to his production of his usage of time, the nature of the conditioned souls, and so on. So ekopi maya shaktya nana bhaved ityarthaha. Even though he is one by the potency of his energy, maya, he becomes many. Sad asad karya karanatmakam sarvam vishwameva. What is gross and what is subtle. In other words, what is the cause and what is effect. All of this refers to the universe. That is being detailed. Manaha ityadi. Mind, elements, material ego, the modes of nature, senses, and so on. Here, the particular order of creation is not indicated here. Dravyam mahabhutani, vikaraha, ahankaraha, guna, sattvaadihi, virat samashti shariram, pataladi, swarat samashti jivaha, hiranyagarbhaha. Swarat refers to Hiranyagarbha, Lord Brahma, who is the controller of all the jivas. He is considered to be the collective jiva. His super soul is Narbada Vishaya Vishnu, his master, controller, his inner ruler. Bhunaha Parameshwarasya Sambandhya. Yes.
Uh,
No, you're echoing. Something is wrong.
Prabhu, is it better now?
Yes, it is better.
Question was, Prabhu, regarding the point of no demands by devotees. So if a devotee is asking, requesting Lord, praying that please let my center flourish and let there be more preaching results. So how can one be free
No,
from
any
such?
desire to make Krishna happy is acceptable. Any other desire is not acceptable on the platform of pure devotional service to Krishna.
So a flourishing center that can be for my own happiness instead of Krishna's own happiness.
It is possible. We may also think all these things in our heads. Any desire to make Krishna happy is fine.
Okay, bro.
That the material creation is not permanent has been discussed many times before, here and before. The material creation is but a temporary exhibition of the material energy of the Almighty God. This material manifestation is necessary to give a chance to the conditioned souls who are unwilling to associate with the Lord in the relationship of loving transcendental service. Such unwilling conditioned souls are not allowed to enter into the liberated life of spiritual existence because at heart they are not willing to serve. Instead, they want to enjoy themselves as imitation gods. The living entities are constitutionally eternal servitors of the Lord, but some of them, because of misusing their independence, do not wish to serve. Therefore, they're allowed to enjoy the material nature, which is called Maya or illusion. It is called illusion because the living beings under the clutches of Maya are not factually enjoyers, although they think that they are being illusioned by Maya. Such illusioned living entities are given a chance at intervals to rectify their perverted mentality of becoming false masters of the material nature, and their imparted lessons from the Vedas about their eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Vedascha sarvairahameva vedyaha. So the temporary creation of the material manifestation is an exhibition of the material energy of the Lord. And to manage the whole show, the Supreme Lord incarnates himself as the Karanarnavashayi Vishnu, just as a magistrate is deputed by the government to manage affairs temporarily. This Karanodakshai Vishnu causes the manifestation of the material creation by looking over his material energy. It's Aikshata. In the first canto of this book, we have already discussed this manifestation to some extent in the explanation of the verse beginning Jagrihe Paurusham Rupam 1.3.1. The duration of the illusory play of material creation is called the Kalpa. And we have already discussed the creations taking place in Kalpa after Kalpa. By the potent activities of Karanodakshai Vishnu, the complete ingredients of creation, namely time, space, cause, result, mind, the gross and subtle elements and their interactional modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and then the senses and the reservoir source, the gigantic universal form, the second incarnation, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and all living beings, both moving and standing, which come out of the second incarnation, all become manifested. Ultimately, all these creative elements and the creation itself are but manifestations of the Supreme Lord's potencies. Nothing is independent of the control of the Supreme Being. The first incarnation in the material creation, namely Karanarnavashayi Vishnu, who is the plenary part of the original personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, is described in the Brahma Samhita 5.48 as follows. Yasyaika nishwasita kala mathavalambya jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanaatha Vishnur Mahansaiha Yasya Kala Vishesho Govindamadi Purusham Tamham Bhajami. All the innumerable universes are maintained only during the breathing period of Mahavishnu or Karanarnavashayi Vishnu, who is only a plenary part of Govinda, the original personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. 3 to 45. Aham bhavo yajya ime prajesha dakshadayo ye bhavadadayascha swarlokapala, khagalokapala, nilokapala, stalalokapala, Gandharva Vidyadhara Charanesha ye yaksha raksho raganatha naganatha ye va rishi nam rishabha pitrinam daityendra siddheshwara danamendra अन्ये च ये प्रेत पिशाच भूत पुष्मांडयादो मृगपक्ष धीशा यत्किंच लोके भगवन् महस्वद ओजः सहस्वद बलवत् क्षमावत् श्री ह्री विभूत्यात्मवद अद्भुतार्णम तत्वं परम रूपवद स्वरूपम. I myself, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great progenitors like Daksha and Swayambhu Manu, yourselves, Narada and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra, the leaders of the Bhurloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of the Gandharva planets, the leaders of the Vidyadhara planets, the leaders of the Charanaloka planets, the leaders of the Yakshas, Rakshas, and Uragas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists, and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, satans, jinn, pushmandas, great aquatics, great beasts, and great birds, etc. In other words, anyone and everyone, exceptionally possessed of power, mental and perceptual dexterity, means expertise, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence, and breeding, whether with form or formless, may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They're only fragments of the transcendental potency of the Lord. Here, it should be noted that Yagya, which refers to Lord Vishnu, is directly an incarnation, whereas Brahma and Bhava is Lord Shiva. They are Avesha avatars. They are empowered incarnations. So everyone other than Lord Vishnu himself, they are all effects of the Lord's potencies. And in that sense, you can say that they are not separate from him, not distinct from him. Yat kinchit bhagavad adi tat sarvam parameva tattvam ityanvaya. So everything that is in existence, all of that is actually the supreme truth. But it is the supreme truth in the sense that it is his opulence. Yattat sarvam param tattvam tad vibhutiriti arthaha. It is his opulence. And as his opulence, it is not different from him. Okay. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur says, Evam cha, in this manner, Kaladina Purushavatārasya karma rupatve api, even though Kala and the others are um, activities of the Purushavatara, te shaktayaha, they are his potencies. Brahmadayaha gunavatara, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are his gunavataras. Prajapatyadayaha vibhudayaha, the Prajapatis and so on are his opulences. Anye kechit jnaninaha yoginaha karminaha mudhaha cha, and the others, the Gyanis, the Yogis, the Karmis, and the fools. The fools refer to the Anyavinashis, those who do not accept Vedic authority. The Stavara Jangamascha, as well as the moving and the non-moving. Sarve Purushavatarasya Srishti Adi Leela Prikaragyeya. You should understand that all of them are participants in the creation, maintenance, and annihilation pastimes of the Purushavatar. Those in the list given above, beginning from Brahmaji, the first living creature within the universe, down to Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Narada, and other powerful demigods, men, supermen, sages, rishis, and other lower creatures of extraordinary strength and opulence, including the dead bodies, satans, evil spirits, jinn, aquatics, birds, and beasts, may appear to be the Supreme Lord, but actually none of them is the Supreme Lord. Every one of them possesses only a fragment of the great potencies of the Supreme Lord. That less intelligent man is surprised to see the wonderful actions of material phenomena as the aborigines are fearful of a great thunderbolt, a great and gigantic banyan tree, or a great lofty mountain in the jungle. For such undeveloped human beings, merely the slight display of the Lord's potency is captivating. A still more advanced person is captivated by the powers of the demigods and goddesses. Therefore, those who are simply astonished by the powers of anything in the creation of the Lord without any factual information of the Lord himself are known as Shaktas, or worshippers of the great powers. The modern scientist is also captivated by the wonderful actions and reactions of natural phenomena, and therefore is also a Shakta. These lower grade persons gradually rise to become Sauryas, worshippers of the sun god, or Ganapatyas, worshippers of the mass of people as Janata Janardhan or Daridra Narayan, etc., in the form of Ganapati, and then rise to the platform of worshipping Lord Shiva in search of the ever existing soul, and then to the stage of worshipping Lord Vishnu, the super soul, etc., without any information of Govinda, Lord Krishna, who is the original Lord Vishnu. In other ways, some are worshippers of race, nationality, birds, beasts, evil spirits, Satans, etc. The general worship of Shani Deva, the lord of distressful conditions, and Shitala Devi, the goddess of smallpox, is also common among the mass of people. And there are many foolish men who worship the mass of people or the poor class of men. So different persons, societies and communities, etc., worship some of the potent manifestations of the Lord, wrongly accepting the powerful object as God. But in this verse, it is advised by Brahmaji that none of them is the Supreme Lord. They're only borrowed plumes, borrowed feathers from the original Almighty Lord, Sri Krishna. When the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita to worship Him alone, it is to be understood that worshipping Lord Krishna includes worshipping all who are mentioned above, because He, Lord Krishna, includes everyone. When the Lord is described as formless in the Vedic literatures, it is to be understood that all forms, like those mentioned above, which are within the experience of universal knowledge, are different exhibitions of the Lord's transcendental potencies only, and none of them factually represents the transcendental form of the Lord. But when the Lord actually descends to the earth or anywhere else within the universe, the less intelligent class of men mistake him to be one of them, and thus they imagine the transcendence to be formless or impersonal. Actually, the Lord is not formless, nor does he belong to any of the multi-forms experienced within the universe. One should try to know the truth about the Lord by following the instruction of Brahmaji. Okay, that completes today's quota, but I still want to just make one quick check. Just want to check on 2.6.45. Yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur has referred to 10.41 Bhagavad Gita. यद्यद् विभूतिमत्सत्त्वं श्रीमदूर्जितमेव वा तत्तदेवावगच्छत्वं मम तेजोंश संभवम्. Know that all opulent manifestations which are filled with beauty, power, to be born from my prowess. Siddhanta Saraswati has remarked, Pratattva Bahiranga Shaktir Kriyaman Mano Rupajukta Unajukta Kriyamay Nahoile O. Even though the products of the Supreme Truth's Bahiranga Shakti is filled with beauty, good qualities, is active. Even though it is not filled with beauty, good qualities, or is not active and so on, it should be understood to be having the nature of the Supreme Lord's opulence. Even though the perception of these opulences, the content of the perception of these opulences is not to be referred to as the Supreme Absolute Truth. The content of their perception is situated in that Absolute Truth. Okay. Okay, so we'll stop with that. Yes, tell me.
Bro, it is written in one of the purport that pure unalloyed devotees can also know God only unto some extent. But in another online Veda base, it is written that unallied devotees can know him up to greater extent.
Which verse? Which?
It is 40 to 41. 40 to 41. In this part, but it is written.
41. 40, 41.
Yes, bro, yes.
Where?
So I am sending. I just copied this. I'm sending here. Let's see. This one. Only the Prashantas or the unallied devotees of the Lord can know him to a greater extent. It is written in the Veda base.
Can know him to some extent, it comes here. And what does offline Veda base say? Can someone check the printed book? Does anyone have a printed book with you?
Yes. Yes, bro.
In
We
the
are.
printed book, what does it say in the
Monro
printed
is
book?
checking. Monro is checking. Yes, bro. 40 to 41 months.
Let me check the online database.
Greater extent. Yeah, in the notebook also it is written greater extent.
Notebook? Printed book?
Yeah, book.
Two point 6.40 to 41. That no one can wait. First of all, it appears as a single paragraph. 2.6.40 to 41 in online database. Why is that? It is actually meant to be 1, 2, 3. 3 paragraphs. 3 paragraphs. This is the third paragraph. Wait, let me check. To a greater extent. Why is it greater extent? This question should be asked to the BBT. Why greater extent? What does the book say? Printed book?
It says, as I said in the chat box.
72 edition says, I mean, previous, before 79, sorry, 77, it says greater extent.
77 extent says greater extent.
Yeah, 77 edition.
And the printed version also says greater extent. Currently printed edition.
Yes, bro, yes.
Okay, so that's what it should be. So that's what it should be. So this, where is this coming from? This is coming from probably an earlier edition or what? First edition? I don't know. Possible.
So there is difference that in some extent and a greater extent, right?
It's okay, but even a greater extent is not complete. No, you cannot know him fully.
What is the meaning of this greater extent means?
You can know him better than what the non-devotees know him. That's all. The empiric philosophers, mystics, fruity workers, they're also worshipping the Lord. So they understand him to some extent. But the unalloyed devotees will know him to a greater extent than them. But all of them will only know him to some extent. That is also correct. It's not wrong to say that. None of us can understand Krishna fully. even after you attain the highest perfection of spiritual existence. So,
Yes, Prabhu. Prabhu, one more thing is that we hear in the Dham, everything can be taken as prasad, even though it is not offering. So, is this for only for natural things like fruits and something, or else anything cooked by the any non-devotees also can be taken?
Prabhupada in Mayapur, he did not like when devotees were buying some milk sweets outside the gate. That is not even rice, it is not even grains, it's just milk sweet. And he said these people will all fall down completely if you start taking all these foods.
So, but devotee says that milk items can be taken, they cannot be contaminated.
Consciousness is contaminated. There is contamination of mind. There is sinful reactions. One may not receive sinful reactions, but one's consciousness will be contaminated. All these problems are there.
But how, Prabhu, when milk is not contaminated, when devotees are cooking, then it should not enter into the food. Then how
No.
will
When devotees are cooking, it's fine. When non-devotees are cooking, when non-devotees are making boiling milk and they're making milk products and you take that, then you will be contaminated. Your consciousness will be contaminated. You may not receive any of their sinful reactions, but your consciousness will be contaminated. There are various levels of contamination in material existence.
But being a milk as a pure product, it's the consciousness should not enter in that.
Why? Why?
Because of being a pure.
Milk is pure, but you're impure. Milk is pure. But the non-devotee who's touching the milk is impure, no?
So it becomes contaminated.
Naturally.
Okay, so we should not take anything outside also if it is cooked by non-devotees, even in the dham.
See, Prabhupada gives instructions. If you don't follow it, you will not be protected by Krishna. That's all. People can do whatever they want. But if you don't obey Krishna's instructions, then you will just suffer. That's all. You can go on saying, but this one says that, that one says that, this. Ultimately, you look at the result. Ultimately, you look at the result. It is the result that matters. You see those who follow correctly, look at their results. You see those who don't follow correctly, look at their results. If you're interested in those results, you will follow the ones who are achieving those results. That's all.
Yes, bro.
We are not meant to simply follow whoever is saying anything and everything. That kind of brainless following is not going to help anyone.
But Prabhu, just like those devotees who are staying outside, like they're doing job and also practicing Krishna consciousness, maybe they are not to some extent to follow these things. So how we can suggest them?
Why? Prabhupada was saying these things for everyone.
Yeah.
You cannot have a normal material life and progress in Krishna consciousness. You cannot have a normal material life and progress in Krishna consciousness. You have to choose what you want. Whether you want to be considered normal by the non-devotees or whether you want to attain sadhana siddhi and bhakti yoga. All right, we'll stop with that.
Prabhu,
Okay, tell me.
nowadays we observe that in the youth the main problem is the porn addiction. This is becoming the biggest problem because maybe because of their bad association or anything. As you say, always the mobile is the biggest problem. But being outside and also working in the company office, and there is very necessary for them to use mobile. So we are not able to ask them to give up the mobile. Otherwise, it cannot be stopped. So what other suggestions we can give to them so that they can practice Krishna consciousness?
They can restrict the usage of their mobile phones. They can associate in intense Krishna consciousness by living with devotees. They can accept a disciplined life. Then gradually one will lose the taste. You follow the process, you get the result. You don't follow the process, you don't get the result. That's all. These things are already, there are already youth preachers throughout India who are following these things and who have rescued so many people from all these addictions. You can directly talk to them. You can directly see the results also. Not some mind-boggling puzzle. Okay.
There are many devotees actually they're practicing, but they're not actually practicing sincerely. Like whatever the standards they should practice.
So
they are getting this type of problems.
naturally, it's not only them, it is them, us, I, you, everyone.
Yeah,
You do the right thing, you get the right result. You
So
do the wrong thing, you get the wrong result.
we should help them uh, for cultivating regularly.
All of us should try to help those who are interested in being helped.
For that, Bhagavatam is sufficient.
Yeah, for that, Prabhupada's books are quite sufficient.
Even small
You
books.
get sufficient guidance on how to help ourselves and how to help others.
Okay, bro.
All right, we'll stop with that.
Thank you, bro.
One Shakal Putra Beshri Pasan Dipya
Name
Vishnu Padhanam Pavan Vaishnav